And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How's everybody doing? Hope everyone's having a good morning. We are coming to you live on YouTube and Twitter at Oregon Football Max Torres and at M Torres Sports with a live episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, and joining me today is Collin King, one of our new interns at Ducks Digest. And we're switching things up a little bit on today's episode. On Saturday, we did an hour-long podcast of the Oregon Recruiting Hour, just jam-packed with notes and intel. So if you haven't watched or listened to that, check it out. But today, we're going to hit the hardwood to talk about Dana Altman and the Oregon men's basketball program because it has been an eventful offseason, to say the least. And, Colin's going to kind of lead the way on this one as more of the hoops guy between the two of us. So I'll kind of turn things over to you and let you kick us off.
Thank you, Max. So really, this offseason's been something that Oregon fans have been watching very, very closely. This is a team that made the NIT, could not make the tournament, the NCAA tournament again this season. That making 2 straight years. And I think without further ado, let's go ahead and get into where we sit, who's on the roster, who's gone, who's here, who's coming in. And let's start off with who we lost. So start things off, Oregon lost former 5-star freshman Kalel Ware. He's a center and got a little bit of playing time. Probably should have had a little bit more. He is off to Indiana. Should make an instant impact for Mike Woodson. He had a bit of issues maybe with like his motor, and maybe some issues. I don't know if this is personal with Dana Altman. And you look at some other departures. You have a former JUCO 3-star, and he was the number 7 player in all of JUCO. Rivaldo Soares, the first guard on this list leaving. He is a former JUCO All-American who did not really see a whole lot of ups really in his time here at Oregon. He kind of struggled with some inconsistencies, and now he is off to Oklahoma after taking an official visit there. I think the one big up that he did have was that game winner against Oregon State. That was a big one, and obviously that would have been a bummer if we lost a little brother, especially in basketball, considering how bad they were. You look at some other departures. You have former 4-star small forward Quincy Guerrier. He transferred in from Oregon from Syracuse after they had their, I believe it was Sweet 16 team, and then comes over here, plays 2 seasons with Oregon, and he was good the season before last, like in his first season here. Took more of a bench role this past year, wasn't as good, I'd say. We don't know where he's going. As of now, he hasn't announced anything. I've heard a little bit of smoke about Illinois, but he has not announced anything. And moving on to the next one, we have 3-star power forward Luke Wurr. He's a guy that I know absolutely nothing about in the transfer process here. I haven't heard a thing. He was actually a very good hustle guy for us last year. Dana Altman played him a good amount when some guys went down with injuries. He was average or above average, I'd say, considering the team on defense. I wouldn't say he was great on offense. He's still a bit of a project there. And yeah, I don't know really what else to add for Luke Wurr. I think he will be a steal for anybody who gets him, honestly. And best of luck to him. He has not announced anything either. And then we take a look at the other JUCO guy on here. Was the number 2 player in all of junior college. Was rated as a 3-star on 247 Sports. That is shooting guard Tyrone Williams. He was another former JUCO All-American who was great, obviously, in junior college. He was not so great and didn't really crack the rotation at all here at Oregon, which is a bummer. There were a lot of fans looking at him saying, okay, he could be pretty good. And he didn't crack the rotation, which was really unfortunate. He did play well in the NIT. In a few games that he was given an opportunity. And now you look, really, this JUCO pattern has not worked out since you've seen Chris Duarte. Obviously, he's the most recent example of that JUCO route working for Oregon and Dana Altman. And I think, I mean, I got to be thinking that that's why Dana Altman continues to go back to JUCO because of Chris Duarte. I don't know what you think, Max.
Yeah, I mean the JUCO option or the JUCO route has been very interesting for Oregon in particular because it's a route that we've seen Dana Altman continue to take, like you were talking about. Especially adding a number of guys from one specific school. I think it was Florida Southwestern or Florida Southwest State,
Yep.
whatever it is, where they found Chris Duarte, and then they also got Brennan Rigsby from
Yep.
there. This past cycle, and I think it's really interesting to kind of look at Altman's strategy, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it here, Colin, is just, trying to find that balance between the high school ranks and the JUCO ranks, and then now the portal as well. They all kind of come with different floors and different ceilings. I think one of the biggest differences between football and basketball, at least at the college level, is that you're seeing a lot of younger guys play a lot sooner in basketball, which makes sense, right? Because the roster is so much smaller. But it's really interesting to see this much movement for Oregon. But at the same time, just from a number standpoint, right? But at the same time, it's also kind of expected, I think, because if you watch that final Altman presser after the NIT loss, he said, things are going to change here. We need to get the right guys in here. Not to say that the departures were the quote wrong guys, but I think it's a statement, or at least a sign, that Altman is, willing to, really change things. I almost said blow things up, but I don't really think that's quite what's happening there. Especially when you have a guy like Dante coming back, which we can talk about later.
Yep.
I know you probably just still want to focus on some of the departures, but I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about all these departures, and he said that if somebody isn't bought in, then we will find somebody who is. That is essentially what he said. The quote is on my Instagram if you want to find that. Um, this is a very, very interesting one. I mean, Kalel Ware leaving, that is a 5-star, right? And we've seen 5 stars or high rated guys not pan out and then transfer out. Um, but we have now 2 5-stars still on the roster. You have Infali Dante, who we're going to get in, we're going to talk about in a little bit, and you still have Nate Biddle, who we're going to talk about in a little bit as well. But then Kalel Ware here, which is another reason for the transfer of Kalel Ware, and that is simply just that it's a crowded room. He's not going to get a whole lot of time regardless at center, or maybe you move, maybe put him at power forward, right? But like with who you have right now, I don't know if you're really looking to do exactly that. And if you do, you'd probably be playing Nate Biddle over Kalel Ware right now, just because of how raw he is. And I don't know. I think probably can transition also to who else is leaving. I think this is a very obvious one that should definitely jump out at everybody, and Oregon fans should know this guy. That is Will Richardson. He is out of eligibility. He was a former 4-star. He played, was a freshman with when Peyton Pritchard was in college. Got a little bit of time in that Final Four run that Oregon made. And actually, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But he's a guy who will go down in Oregon record books. He was very inconsistent, though. And that's what you look at going forward. You wonder, can Oregon find a guard who will be more consistent? Or can Oregon find the next Peyton Pritchard, or maybe even a freshman, sophomore version of Will Richardson? Richardson was hampered by injuries. His 2021 or 2020 to 2021 season had that broken hand, missed a lot of time. You saw an illness keep him out at last year's Pac-12 tournament, which was a big bummer, big blow to the team. And I don't know if he is pursuing a professional career or not. He hasn't made any announcement on that. I believe he has declared for the draft, though. Also, don't quote me on that. I think I saw it on his Instagram. But then going forward, so who's left on this roster? You look with all these departures, you've got your senior center Infali Dante coming back. That is by far the biggest returner here with Dante. I mean, he was terrific this season, had a little bit of inconsistencies at points this season. Early on in the year wasn't terrific by any means, but he was clearly the best player on this team. I don't think there's any real debate about that. And when he went down, the team was not as good. It was very, very clear that the team was not as good, and it also did give time to younger guys, which is why I think this next guy kind of broke out, and that is Nate Biddle. Nate Biddle is another maybe power forward slash center, depends what you want to call him. Um, is a guy that I think personally should be starting at the 4, but I'm not sure how Dana Altman will work it out. Um, he broke out at the end of the season. He was terrific at the end of the year, and I want to see what he can do going forward. Like he really showed a lot of flashes to the Oregon fans, and a lot of Oregon fans were showing him praise, which he completely deserved. He stepped up in the absence of Infali Dante and really took over offensively, and he was very good defensively as well. Another big returning guy is Jermaine Cousinard. He's a transfer from South Carolina. Played last season with Oregon, missed a lot of the season due to injury early on. Was terrific. I mean, just he was on an absolute tear to start the year when he came back, and then he just got kind of inconsistent, which is unfortunately kind of the trend I guess we've seen with Oregon guards recently. Just not really too consistent. I love Cousinard. I think he's a great player, but if he can fix these inconsistencies, Oregon is definitely a far better team. And Oregon's ceiling is far better with him on the court. Now you take a look. I don't know if Max, you want to add on to exactly what I was saying or not.
Yeah, I can say a little bit here. You've been on a tear. Yeah, just some of the guys that Oregon has coming back. I think obviously the team is going to start around N'Faly Dante. He's kind of going to be the nucleus of this team. Definitely a good piece for Dana Altman to build around. Especially with some of the younger guards coming in from the 23 class that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit here. I think some people are really hoping that Jackson Shellstad can be that, Peyton Pritchard 2.0 kind of a deal. They really need that, take over, game on the line, clutch kind of guy at the guard spot. And, we still don't know completely what the roster is looking like yet. We got Keyshawn Bartholomew. We have to see what he's going to be doing. But I think, yeah, it's nice to see that leap from Nate Biddle that you mentioned. Just looking at some of his stats, he more than doubled his minutes. Started in 22 of 27 games last year. Averaged 7.2 points, doubled his blocks from year to year. So he looks like he's really settling in here, and I think that stability kind of in the post will help them. Will help Dana Altman kind of jumpstart this team a little bit. But where you're really seeing that overhaul, at least right now, there's still some time, obviously, is in the backcourt with some of these guards and wings.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the takeover. I mean, this team really didn't have the only real possible guy you could say that took over was N'Faly Dante. And that's why his return is so significant for this team going forward. But there's also guys who haven't announced anything yet, and they still have the potential to return. And there's 3 of them. So you're going to have your guard and senior Keyshawn Bartholomew. He was a transfer from Colorado. Again, continuing this transfer trend here for this roster. He was terrific towards the end of the year. He was definitely one of the better players in this team. I'd say maybe 2, 3, maybe 4, depending on where you really have him, right? And he missed some time as well. Both these transfer guards from last year, Cousinard and Bartholomew, missed time. And then Bartholomew, you saw there was a game, I believe that was Colorado or Washington State, I don't remember which, but he really, really took over and he was unstoppable. And then for some reason, Dana took him out when he was hot, and Oregon ended up losing that game. He's a very valuable player. Hoping Oregon can get him back, because that is a significant piece of this team. And the next guy is a guy that I personally like, and that is guard Brennan Rigsby. Rigsby was a guy that obviously you've seen the dunks out of high school. He had that mixtape with Ball is Life. He went to JUCO, Florida Southwest I believe it's community college, yeah, or it's junior college, regardless. And he was a guy that got hurt towards the end of the year, had a season-ending injury, was hurt at the beginning of the year as well. Didn't get a whole lot of playing time. He was a solid defender. Where I wanted to see him grow was the three-point shooting, and he didn't entirely do that during the season. But I'm still optimistic for him. It's just how is he going to fit in with potentially Keyshawn coming back, potentially um, like with maybe Shellstad being a top guy on this team. It'll be very, very interesting to watch. Um, and then you also got another guy who takes up a scholarship here. That's not um, being said in a bad way, but redshirt freshman Ethan Butler. He's a guy who played in 4 games, kept his redshirt status, and he will be back. He's a guard slash forward. Didn't play a whole lot. I don't know if he has that much stats. I don't know how much time he also played. But Ethan Butler being back is an interesting one. Could definitely be a guy kind of on the bench, but maybe be brought into the rotation depending on who Oregon brings in with their last scholarship spot. Um, I don't know if you have a thought on Barthélemy or Rigsby or even Butler.
Not a whole lot to add there. I mean, I think Rigsby's transition to Oregon was a little bit inconsistent. I think that it wasn't necessarily the season that some people were hoping for. Seeing him come out of the JUCO ranks, I think he's a guy that obviously brings some athleticism in the paint as kind of a little bit of a slasher, but he also has some added value shooting the ball. Depending on what he I don't know. We're expecting him to come back next year, right? Is that the kind of the feel
You
right
mean
now?
Barthélemy? Is that what you're saying?
No, Rigsby. Sorry.
Rigsby, there is optimism, yes, that he will be coming back. There's also a lot of optimism that Barthélemy will be coming back.
Okay, yeah. So I think for Rigsby, for him to, if he can come back, then he can hopefully settle in a little bit and get a little more comfortable and try to have a little bit more of a consistent role for Oregon.
Hopefully stay
Uh,
healthy.
yeah, and stay healthy. That was obviously the injury was a big thing that he had to overcome this year. So it's kind of crazy, Colin, when you think about all the movement that they've had, and then some of the clarity that they're getting with some of the transfer portal additions that we're going to talk about here in a sec. But there's still, some question marks in terms of, exactly what next year's roster is going to look like from some of the guys that were on last year's team.
Yeah, so you look at all these waiting decisions, who's returning, and then you go out in the portal. And the first guy you got, well, let's just first talk about the team needs. I mean, this team, obviously, with all the departures, they needed some guards, they need some wings, potentially a big man. That has not been brought in yet. Um, and first, they went to Florida Southwest yet again, junior college, and they brought in guard slash forward here in Jadrian Tracy. And the biggest thing that he will cover for Oregon potentially is that 43% from 3 point. That is absolutely huge for Oregon. They need a guy that can be a knockdown shooter. And if he is consistent from 3 point at the next level here at Oregon, then I don't see any way he's held out of this rotation at all. And I think he could be a very, very valuable piece for this team. But it's just all about, can he maintain those numbers that he had in JUCO? And obviously, he's not going to shoot 43% again, but can he be good enough, definitely, to be serviceable and not be another JUCO guy that sits on the bench? And then you look going forward from there. You have former Georgia guard Kario Oquendo. He is a guy that Oregon recruited. He is another JUCO guy originally, which is interesting, continuing that trend yet again. Um, Oregon recruited him, didn't get him. He ended up going to Georgia. He entered the portal briefly last season, then returned to Georgia. Oregon offered him, reached out then as well, and then again this year, and Oregon got him. And what you're getting with him is a very, very athletic guard. He is extremely bouncy, and he is a guy that will not is not afraid to throw his body down low. Like, he will throw his body at guys in the paint. Um, he will draw fouls for sure. But I mean, you look at his shooting percentages. I believe he's shooting 39% from the field, And he's also not a good three-point shooter, which is something, again, at guard that Oregon doesn't have. And I personally somewhat like this pickup with Kario. I think this is something that Oregon was lacking, being able to drive the ball. Richardson seemed complacent at times, didn't want to drive the ball, hesitated. Keyshawn was more of a shooter outside, but he was still crafty on the inside. And then Kusinar didn't really, I mean, he just kind of drove and chucked it up at times. Um, and this is something that Oregon does need, but can he do it controlled? Can he be better at it at Oregon? That's the real question here. Also, his consistency and maybe getting that 3-point shot up. From what I've seen on film, when he's in the corner and he's set, he's pretty knocked down. Like he is a very solid shooter when set and in the corner. Uh, with him being a guard, I'm not sure how much he's going to be setting in the corner. However, something to watch for sure. Not sure, like Max, have you seen a whole lot about Kario at all?
I haven't seen a whole lot on Kario, but I think I wanted to talk about just kind of his fit and maybe a little bit of a trend that we've seen with Dana Altman, kind of bringing in some really athletic guards. I think maybe part of the reason that you see him bring in a guy like Kario is because of his athleticism and ability to kind of push the ball. I think that that's kind of been a mark in previous years where the Ducks have been successful under Altman is pushing the ball, having the best offense being some good defense and really getting after it in transition. So I think that that's where we maybe see a little bit of Cario's fit kind of lining up with the Ducks and what they've done the past couple of years. But it's been interesting also to see Georgia kind of rise as a little bit more of a notable team in the SEC. Especially with Anthony Edwards going there before he ended up in the league on the Timberwolves. So maybe Oregon can bring in this another portal guy and try to kind of take him to the next level. I think I'd be interested to kind of get your thoughts, Colin, just on how Altman has managed going through the three levels: high school, portal, and JUCO. Do you like that mixture? Do you think it's kind of, because it feels like it really hasn't worked out too well for Oregon,
Yeah.
obviously these past two seasons, but we've also seen it work out before.
I personally do like the portal. I think that Dana Altman needs to be much more aggressive in the portal for some of these top guys. He hasn't been overly aggressive. He settled, I think, a few, even once, maybe twice this cycle. He settled for some guys, and I don't really love the JUCO route anymore. I loved it obviously when Duarte came in, and he was fantastic. But outside of that, I haven't really loved it. And you've seen transfers in that have been fantastic with Oregon. You've seen transfers in that have been horrible, and then they've transferred out. Not going to name names, but yeah, I mean, and then also back to Cario. What I think Dana Altman wanted, obviously the athleticism, but somebody who can make a big play, like a big dunk or something, get the team somewhat pumped up. That's something this team hasn't had. The past two seasons we haven't had at Oregon. And this next guy as well does just that. And that is Arizona State transfer wing in Devan Cambridge. And Devan Cambridge is a guy who started for Arizona State, previously at Auburn. His brother transferred into Arizona State from Nevada to join him there. And Cambridge was just under 10 points this season. He had 5.4 rebounds, was over 50% shooting from the field, which was great. The more I watch his film, the more I like it. He's a guy that cuts a lot, slashes a lot, and gets open really. And he's very, very athletic. He's a solid defender, and he's a guy that can go up and make a highlight dunk to get the group or get the team hyped up. And that's something that Oregon really, really needs. Like I mentioned with Oquendo. And the one thing that really comes into question here, again, for both players, really, the 3-point percentage with Cambridge only at 33%. And then you also look at free throw percentage. That's something Oregon struggled with recently, and they have not addressed that whatsoever. And when I was talking about Oregon has settled maybe twice, one for sure being in being from Cambridge, I do like the move to pick up Cambridge. I think it's a good one. However, they picked Cambridge in the end over Dalton Nett from Northern Colorado. Nett ended up announcing his commitment a few hours after Cambridge announced his to Oregon. And I feel like that it was an Oregon or Tennessee battle. IU was in it early. A few other teams were pushing for Nett as well. But if Oregon really wanted to just completely solve their 3-point issue, that would have definitely been a big stride in doing so. And it's unfortunate that they didn't get him, but Cambridge is a guy that is pretty good. I'm guessing they're still going to be looking for someone who can shoot the three.
Yeah, and they need to address the 3-point shooting because that was something that plagued them the entire year. And it's not, you can't win by just settling for jumpers and layups and dunks and all that. So you got to be able to attack your opponent from a couple of different ways, break them down from a couple of different ways. So there's still some time left, thankfully, for Oregon to be able to get some more additions. Maybe as we kind of start to wind down a little bit, we can get some thoughts on some of these incomers, these newcomers in the 2023 class. You got Jackson Shelstad, Kwame Evans, and Mookie Cook. Definitely a really solid haul for the Ducks. And I think it was one that might have been a little bit up in the air at one point, after the season came to a close, because Altman was saying, when he was calling out fans for like not having the fan support and, the lack of buzz around the program, he was saying, if I'm the problem, make the call. And I thought that was crazy to see, because Dana's always been very forthcoming, but he doesn't really get that upset.
Yeah.
And even that was like, pretty out of character for him. So I bring that up to say that, people were kind of wondering maybe at one point is Altman going to be on his way out? And then what would that mean for the 2023 class? But they were able to obviously keep these guys intact, and it looks like they're going to be, arriving here pretty soon.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, Altman was very animated, and he was several times on the sideline this season, just frustrated with his guys, and frustrated that they didn't play like they did apparently in practice. But to the newcomers, you got Kwame KJ Evans here, number 11 player in the class, according to 247 Sports. He has incredible upside, really both sides of the ball. If anybody out of this group is going to be a one and done, it's definitely him. He's definitely the most polished guy right now. He's an extremely versatile guy on defense and on offense. He's a guy who could come in and potentially knock down the three with some consistency. And he's also very good in transition game, which Oregon needed as well. And that's a guy from Montverde Academy, one of the top programs in the nation. And it's a very good addition, I think. And he's probably play power or small forward for the Ducks, I would assume. And then we get into another forward here, another 5-star here with small forward Mookie Cook. Mookie is one of the two guys in this class that is homegrown in Oregon. Mookie being from Portland, I believe.
But Jefferson, I think.
Jefferson, my bad.
At one point, no, from Portland, but
okay.
Jefferson's in Portland.
Ranked number 23 in this class by 247 Sports, and he's the number 5 small forward. Great athlete, great upside yet again. And I've heard some knocks on him just being, can he fill out his frame a bit, and then being maybe more consistent on offense, because he does settle for jump shots. We've seen that a few times in his games at Arizona Compass Prep, another national team. But regardless of that, whether he can be more consistent, he's going to be another good defender, and Oregon needed that. So you're getting 2 good defenders already in Kwame Evans and in Mookie Cook. And then you add the final piece, which seems like everybody's most hyped up for, which I'm not sure if, I guess it is because he's from Oregon, and that being Jackson Shelstad from West Linn, Oregon. You hear West Linn and you talk about basketball players, immediately you think of Peyton Pritchard. And that is exactly why I think there's a bit of, I say nostalgia. I don't really mean necessarily that it's old or anything, but just the thought of Peyton Pritchard comes to mind when you hear of West Lynn point guards. And Shellstad is a guy who really led that West Lynn team to a nationally top 20. They were nationally top 25 at one point. They dropped out after losing to Tualatin in the state final. But this is a guy, Shellstad. He's got good range, very, very good range, and he will pull the trigger if he needs to. He put that on display against Sierra Canyon and a few other teams that they played in the national schedule. He's going to have to add to the frame, as both the other two do as well. And I'm sure he would, or I'm sure he will, rather. But also, he needs to not settle. Him and Mookie both settle occasionally. Mookie for jump shots, Shellstad for three-pointers. Thing with Shellstad is teaching him he needs to drive, attack the rim. He's a guy who isn't going to be a terrific defender. He is not, but he has upside there, and he's shown that at times as well. And that really leaves the team here 12 guys potentially, awaiting 3 announcements. So the team could be as small as 9, but probably going to go portaling, I would assume, and not have a freshman for the last guy. But it'll be interesting to see what happens for sure.
Got a comment here we can kind of address, Colin, and then we can wind down for today and wrap up the episode. This one coming from Jason Miller saying Neck was certainly a miss, and I believe as soon as we knew we weren't going to get him, we locked in on Cambridge. Altman settling because he isn't able to land the bigger guys. Any thoughts there? What do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with this. I mean, Net was a horrid miss for us, for Oregon, and this, I mean, really just the staff as well. It's just really hard to say that Altman isn't capable of landing bigger guys, because we know obviously in this class he landed 2 5-stars. This is like a historic class here for Oregon. But in terms of transfer portal guys, yeah, I don't think they really do compete with a lot of top guys. And Oquendo is a higher rated guy than Cambridge. And I don't know that really Oregon's going to go for any top tier guy to fill out their last spot. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a big man. I wouldn't be surprised if it was in their forward. But I think this is a great comment, because truthfully, he is right. I mean, we definitely did lock in on Cambridge after, well, I think we had the momentum really with Net after his visit, his unofficial visit to Eugene, but then he got a visit scheduled to Tennessee, and then that's where things really started to shift. Oregon was still, even after that visit, the early leader, but Tennessee was right there, and they closed the gap. And then we started looking elsewhere, and Cambridge came in, I believe, the weekend after that, and they were like, okay, maybe that's where we go. There's another potential guy working to confirm it still, potential 4th transfer portal guy that will be on campus sometime soon. And then we're in it already early for a few top guys in 2024. But yeah, I don't know. This is a great comment.
All right. Well, yeah, it's definitely been a busy offseason so far for Dana Altman and the Ducks in Eugene. Lots of departures, but also some notable additions as well. We'll continue to track those additions and any other movements that come up on the Oregon basketball front. But any last comments to add before we get out of here, Colin?
Not really. I mean, hoping for a great season, obviously, and hopefully, definitely a better season. Don't want to sit through another season where I feel like I want to kind of yell at my TV. So I don't know. We'll see if Dana can align the Rubik's cubes, and we'll see what happens.
All right. This is your second episode on the pod. Great stuff. Where can people find more of you if they want to connect with you and kind of what you have going on in the Oregon space?
Yeah, so you guys can find me at Insider Ducks on Twitter and at ducks.insider on Instagram. I post a lot on Instagram, working to get my Twitter page a bit more active. And then obviously I'll be on Ducks Digest hopefully for a while.
All right, right on. So make sure you guys lock in with Colin, the newest addition to the team. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at mtorresports, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Oregon Football Max Torres. Drop a like and a comment. while you're here. Only takes a second out of your day, and you can find all my written work primarily covering Oregon football and Oregon football recruiting. Big spring game on tap this weekend, so there should be plenty of recruiting news. We'll make sure that we keep you up to date over there. But until next time, appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to talk some Ducks. Thanks to Collin for coming on, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.